Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get them here.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining on time, y'all. Hold on, we got some people coming from the waiting room. Wait for it, wait for it. And I got to keep letting people in. Good evening, happy Thursday. I hope that daylight savings time is not kicking your butt like it is for me. And wait, they're joining again. I'm gonna not take up too much space because I want you guys to get started, but I just wanted to say hello for those who haven't been on a call with us before. I just want to say hello. My name is Tiffany Dina Lofton. I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am the advisor for the United States Student Association. I just wanted to name that because we are building a national student voice to respond to not only the violence that is happening and the attacks on higher education, but more importantly, we're organizing a national student voice so that students have a home to organize, to protect, and dream for a better and bigger education. I love being able to do this work with folks. And what has been very, very, very clearly communicated is that you all, students across the country, are looking for more opportunities to get training. And one of the trainings that people have been asking for is public media training, which is very different from public speaking, doing a speech, being a motivational speaker. It's very different from that. Being a student leader who has the ability to speak to the press is a very important skill. Many of you are coming to our National Grassroots Legislative Conference next weekend in Washington, D.C. And there are folks who are here and people who are coming who might be asked to speak to the press as they come to our conference. So this is an opportunity to do two things. One, give you the tools that you need. And two, make sure that when we get to Washington, D.C., if a media release or an interviewer or whatever want to speak to folks, that we know who to pick. You got to be trained to be able to do this. It's nothing that you do on the whim. So I am just so excited that Mark Banks, who you're going to get trained by tonight, had this incredible idea and that he is graciously giving his expertise and his leadership and his experience. I met Mark when he was the National Press Secretary for the NAACP, and I go to him for all things communication, including LegCon. So Mark, thank you so much for hosting this training for us. This is going to be incredible and amazing. And without further ado, I'm passing it to you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. It's an honor to be here. And I just want to thank everybody for showing up. This is an investment. Media training is really important, especially in this day and age. So kudos to you all for showing up. I really appreciate it. So we're not going to belabor the time because it's short and we lost an hour already. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time. But as Tiffany said, we want you to be prepared. And media training, it's a transferable skill. We talk about, being public speaker. You can use some of the things you learn in media training for that as well. So without further ado, we'll get started. Tiffany already talked about me, but just to give you a little bit of background about me, I know you're probably like, I've never heard of this person. Who is he? I'm 10 years in the game as a communications and marketing aficionado, which means I'm a communications dork. I love communications and I love marketing. So I worked for everybody from the NAACP, presidential campaigns, nonprofit, entertainment, all across the board. So that's a little bit about me and my work in communications. A little bit more because I believe in, getting to know people. I believe that health as well. So taking care of your physical, mental, and spiritual is really important to me, especially doing this work. As you all will be on the front lines of advocating for education policies, it's really important that you take care of the whole of yourself. I also love exploring. Tiffany knows as well. I love traveling, and I believe that everyone should do it, whether it's outside of your community, your neighborhood, or getting out into the world. Learning new skills, ways of thinking, and being in this world is really important for how we relate to each other and how we communicate with each other. So all of this ties back into my profession and love of communications. Really quick, the agenda today. So we're going to talk about the importance of media training and why it's so important to be trained to speak to the media. We live in a digital age where media is everywhere. There's always a camera phone, there's always a microphone, there's always a video phone pointed at you. So it's really important to know how to manage your message, create a message that's really important, developing your voice in the media, whether that's online, social media, or in front of a camera. We're going to talk about some interview techniques things to look out for. I'm sure we've all seen really good interviews that moved us, and I'm sure we've all seen pretty bad interviews that have been like, oh, that's cringeworthy. So we're going to talk about some of those interview techniques and pitfalls to avoid when doing media interviews. And then my favorite part, we're going to do a little bit of mock interviews. So hopefully we have some brave participants who want to try, and it won't be hard. It's a safe space. I'm not gonna, it's no gotcha. I'm not, Piers Morgan or any, media interviewer trying to get you caught up, but we do want you to feel comfortable and, just do a mock interview to see which you could improve upon or your strengths and weaknesses. Then there'll be a little bit of time for Q&A. I want to hear from you all your questions, something I didn't cover that you may have a question about, and then we'll be finished. So without further ado, let's get started. The importance of media training. Preparation is so key when you talk about media training. Whether this is your first time or your 50th or your, sixth time going through media training, the key is to always be prepared. This quote, media training is not about just being scripted, it's about being prepared. So you want to go in feeling confident, comfortable, knowing your points of what you want to get across, and being aware that, the interviewer has an agenda, and that's to get a good interview. And they will take either a bad one or a good one. It doesn't matter to them, but you want to walk away with something that you can use that gets your message across and amplifies your voice. The second thing, your voice is your asset. If you don't tell your story, someone will. So it's so important. Like, use this as an instrument. Think of your voice as an instrument. You want to take care of it. You want to make sure that you know it well, and that nobody can tell your story better than you. And the third thing is communication is an art. Media training is about mastering the art of delivering your message with confidence, clarity, and impact. So you want to not just communicate with your voice, but you want to communicate with your emotions. Like, let people feel you. Don't be afraid to use your hands in certain instances, and not all instances, but don't be afraid to use your vocal, inflections in your voice, your eyes, your whatever you communicate with, which is our whole of being. Be sure to do that because have you ever met someone where they say something, but then it's like their actions don't align with that? You want to make sure that you are communicating um, in a way that is believable and authentic to you. So let's get into key message developing. A key message is a clear, concise, compelling statement that communicates the core value or purpose of an organization, brand, or campaign. So you want to make sure, and this is where the work comes in, right? You want to make sure that you are very clear, you are very aligned with your message that you want to get across, because while you may know it, other people don't, and we cannot assume that they're gonna do the research. So you are the issue expert. You are the person that they are calling on to come on TV, a podcast, your local TV station to talk about the issue. So you want to make sure that you know it well, you have it down in sound bites, and it's clearly communicated. You want to be concise, as I said, short and to the point. 1 to 3 sentences should get your message across. Memorable, make it easy to understand. No one has the attention span nowadays. Everyone is very like all over the place. So you want to make sure that you say something that is memorable, easy to understand, and easy to repeat. That usually comes in the form of a slogan or, a really good talking point that people are like, wow, that really stuck with me or that really resonated. Make it memorable for them. And that takes a little bit of work, but doing that work will get you to a place where you can really nail all 4 of these things. You want to make sure that you are audience centric. Create your message and make it relevant to your audience. I talk to a lot of brands, a lot of people, and they're really excited about their message, right? They're really excited about this certain thing, right? It could be a product, it could be a campaign, it could be, an event happening, and that's all well and good. But you have various audiences who, to them, it's just another thing, it's another day. So you have to make sure that you're meeting them where they are when you develop your message so they can easily resonate with it and they can say, oh, okay, this is why we want to show up to this. This is why it's relevant to me and meaningful to my community where I'm at in life. So you want to do the work to make sure that you're meeting them where they are. And last, but most importantly, be authentic and be credible. And that's just being honest, that's being consistent with your message, and that's making sure you have the facts and the data to back it up. That's a really key part, especially nowadays where people just get on TV or they get on social media and they're able to create and make up anything, right? And not always for the good. So you want to make sure that you're able to combat those, false narratives with facts, and educating the public, who you're speaking to. So those are really important things you want to think about when you're developing your key messaging. There's a three-tier message framework, and I'm sorry, this is really like wonky in the weeds stuff, but I want you all to have this so you kind of know, how to go about approaching a media interview. You want to make sure that your primary message and your core message, there's an overarching statement that just kind of people can get right off the bat. So I came up with this one for, USSA, and it just off the whim, right? We empower students with the necessary tools to advocate for educational policies that effectively impact them and their communities. Boom. Right there, you said a lot, and it's gonna make me go, okay, that's a good sentence. Now tell me more, right? But that's what you want to do. You just want something that's really good, that's really pithy, and catches them really quick with strong language, that moves them to say, I want to know more. Once you get their attention and pull them in, you want to start to support your messaging with three key points. And these reinforce the primary message, right? With evidence, with things that differentiate you from other, organizations or campaigns in the market. And it should also kind of speak to how it benefits, your audience. So here's some examples here that I put together for USSA. Over the past decade, USSA trained students have successfully influenced key policies, including Pell Grant protections, tuition freezes, and voting rights expansions on colleges' campuses. So that's just something that's really factual, that speaks to the work that you all have done and is evidence-based, and it makes people, have the credibility for the organization. They start to say, okay, they've done some really, influential policy work, that, is good for the community or good for, students. So that's, something that's supporting your primary message. Students gain hands-on training in lobbying, grassroots organizing, and policy analysis, equipping them to lead on their campuses and beyond. This is a message that's real. If I was a student, I would be intrigued, right? Because now you're telling me what I get out of the organization. You're telling me the work that you're doing. And if it's of interest to me, I'm going to say those are things that I would like to do. How can I get involved? So, but you want to make sure that these messages are concise and quick and to the point, because, like I said, students of all people, we know your schedules are really busy from class, extracurricular activities, and just living life. So you want to make sure that this message, when you develop them, are quick and to the point. Last one, USSA is a led by students for students. We don't just talk about change, we create it. That's my favorite run because it is just direct. There's no mincing of the words, and it's very clear that you are serious about the work you're doing. So when you think about your three-tier message framework, think about it in ways that are strong language, gets to the heart of the message that you're trying to communicate, and reaches the different audiences. So again, you want to make sure that you are creating audience-centric messages. Think about who you're talking to. And while the heart of your message doesn't change, you might need to, massage, as we say, the language sometimes, right? To make it appealing to the different people you're speaking to, right? If I'm a partner and I want to invest in the work, I'm thinking more so about the progress, right? And how the work is benefiting the community that I want to see do well. If I'm a student, I'm thinking about, what can I do to help? Like, how does it appeal to me and my values? So you want to make sure the messaging changes based on that, what they care about, and what action you want them to take. I always say your message is not complete unless you have a call to action, right? So if I send an email and I'm just telling you what we've done in our updates, that's nice and well. But what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do with this information? How do you want me to share it? How do you want me to use it? How do you want me to support or engage with it? We should make sure that our audiences always know how it is that we want them to engage with our message, when they get it. And sometimes maybe it's just an update. But you should also make that clear. Hey, we just want to let you know what's going on, so you have the tools and information to know how you can take action. So that's another thing. And then, what tone resonates. If you've ever heard of the term brand tone, they're talking about how a brand talks to you. So, a cereal brand is going to talk to you differently than a coffee maker brand, right? There's subtle differences. They're both selling a product, right? But they want you to engage with them differently. Same goes for, politics or advocacy. You hear different people approach issues differently. That is very intentional. That is very um, a part of their brand narrative and their brand voice, trying to get you to move you into a certain direction. So I want you to think of yourselves as brands, as people who are, you know, trying to move in a certain move other people in a certain direction, and keep them engaged with your brand voice and your brand tone. Here's just another outline of audience and message focusing. Different messages for different people, right? So you have a message for your partners, you have a message for your students, and you have a message for the media. Specifically, the media, USSA provides expert student voices, data-driven insights, and firsthand perspectives on the issues shaping education policy today. That's interesting to the media because it's all encompassing, and then they can dig deeper on that with your supporting facts and your supporting figures. And it's kind of, the media is expansive, right? So they don't really go too deep into any one issue, but you want to capture them with a statement that's powerful, that's going to draw them in and make them want to know more. Um, if your message is going to students, right? Higher education is under attack. Pell Grants are on the chopping block. Tuition keeps rising and student rights are being restricted. But here's the truth. When students organize, we win, right? So to me, if I'm a student, that's powerful, right? You're talking about things that impact me, Pell Grants. You're talking about tuition keeps rising. You're talking about student rights. All of those things impact a student, right? So you want to make sure if your audience is a student-driven, audience, or you're on a student podcast, talk about the things that are relevant to them and keep it, centric to that audience. Requires a little research to know, right? But doing the research and the preparation is key to having a good media interview. For your partners, maybe there's partners who want to get involved and invest in the work. Talk to them and talk about the role they can play in helping fund the work and helping expand the work, and in helping drive policy change that benefits, a substantial amount of people. So those are just some of the different messages that you should work on developing when you're talking about media interviews, or just really in general talking to different audiences. Okay, now we're going to talk about some techniques really quick. Here's some different interview formats require tailored approaches, which just basically means there's so many different formats nowadays. You have podcasts, you have YouTube, you have, of course, traditional media, which is kind of, outdated, but you have that, but there's so many other avenues of which people are communicating and learning from each other. But I believe the rules still apply, right? The rules, they may change a little bit, right? But they still apply across the board because you are often either representing yourself or you're representing a brand. And you want to make sure that when you go and represent that brand, you are keeping in mind how you're showing up, how you sound, your tone, connecting with the audience in a authentic way. So here's some of the tips that I have for you that can help you do that. So when we're talking about live TV interviews, you should really expect it to go fast. Like 5 minutes, it's fast, but it feels long when you're on TV, but every second counts. So you can always expect when you're doing a live TV interview that the questions are going to come quick because they have a quick window, but they want to try to get a lot in. So it requires you to be really prepared and be on all your P's and Q's because it is visual, it is vocal, it is showing, looking at your body language. There's a lot to be mindful of when you're doing a media interview. So just keep that in mind. But the main thing is keep your responses concise and engaging. I can't tell you how many times there's an interview and you're like, they hit the point, but then they keep talking. So make sure that your response is concise and engaging. Nonverbal cues matter too. When you're on TV, you have to maintain good posture and good eye contact. I know it's kind of strange if you've ever been on an interview where it's, remote or you're not actually in the studio, you're staring at a camera. And it's well, nowadays it's all we do. So it shouldn't be that weird. But back when we first started doing it was weird to look at a camera and realize you're talking to millions and a interviewer on the other side. But that's a thing to keep in mind, that you are connecting with millions and they are hearing your message. So you want to be mindful of that in your appearance, your dress, how you show up, teeth, all the things that we think are superficial. When it comes to media interviewing, it matters, and it helps with credibility in media world, right? I think, when we're face to face, that stuff shouldn't matter, right? But in the media world, unfortunately, there's a lot of, it's about optics. It's an interview, so they want you to show up presenting in a certain way, right? Another thing, avoid filler words. And this takes work. And as I just did, right? Like, people still do it, and it's tough to get over. Even as me, as a media person, like, I still say and sometimes. But as much as you can, work to eliminate those words from your vocabulary. And that takes work, and that takes a lot of mindfulness. And if you're going to say or think about pausing before you do so, and that'll help with getting rid of that and and after a while you'll start to eliminate those from your vocabulary. Be sure to speak clearly and with energy, right? So don't get on TV with a demure, as they say, attitude. Make sure that you are energetic and showing up for the interview with a lot of energy and being able to communicate clearly. So stick to 50 to 30 seconds response and sound bites. Focus on one key message per answer. And if caught off guard, pause before responding. Print and online interviews, phone or in person, these are a little bit easier, especially when they're on the phone, because you have an opportunity to go on and off the record. And hopefully you're working with a established media person who can help with making sure that you know what on and off the record is, which basically means it can either be printed or it can't, or it can be attributed to you, or it cannot be. So those are really key terms that you should know on and off the record, especially when dealing with journalists and talking to them one-on-one. Journalists may paraphrase your words, so make sure that you're speaking in quotable sound bites, right? Make sure it's quick and pithy, and they don't have an opportunity to misinterpret what you are saying, because they will. And sometimes not intentionally, but if you don't make it clear and allow and give them the opportunity to know exactly what you're saying, they're going to paraphrase. They leave silence to prompt for more information. They do this with journalists, they also do it on TV. They want you to keep talking. That gives them more opportunity to catch you up a little bit and realize that, okay, here's a point that I can hit them on. Once you've made your point, stop talking. Allow that silence. It's uncomfortable, but the interviewer, if they're good, will pick up on it quickly and keep moving. If you do keep talking, they're going to allow you to talk. And sometimes that's not for the best. And we all know that, rambling and going off on a tangent is not always great on TV. Clarify the context before answering. So if they ask you a question, don't just answer the question. Make sure that you take hold of the whole context of what they're asking. Be clear and make sure that whatever question they ask, because they're going to ask it in a way that maybe leaves out context that you have, take that as an opportunity to allow them to take that as an opportunity to say, actually, here's the piece you're missing, and I'm happy to educate you or inform you about it. That's what that opportunity looks like. So make sure that when you hear it, if there's a question that you realize there's a lot of context missing, don't be afraid to jump in and say, actually, here's some context, and then get to answering that question. Don't say anything that you wouldn't want published. And that's hard because you have to be quick and you have to think in the moment, but be sure to don't continue to say anything that you wouldn't want published in a way that leads them like, oh, well, we can take this soundbite because he kept talking. It may not be what you really wanted the soundbite to be, but they're going to take that and use it, and it may not always be to the best of your cause. So make sure that you cut that off when possible. If unsure, offer to follow up with accurate details. This is really akin to saying, I don't have that information right now, but I'm happy to get back to you when I have more on it. Don't be afraid to say that when it comes to, interviews, even on TV. I can't, the response may be, I can't speak to that right now, but I'm happy to follow up with you and get you more information on that. That's better than doing hypotheticals or guesstimating or putting your own spin on it, because then you become liable for that information. Panel discussions and press conferences, be prepared to follow up. Be prepared for follow-ups with multiple journalists. It's going to be quick, especially in person. Messages should be clear and adaptable for various audiences. Acknowledge other panelists' points before transitioning back to your message. So this is when you're on a panel and someone just spoke, you want to make sure that you are mindful of what they just said and making sure that you tie your message in so it's a seamless transition between panelists. Be ready with the headline statement before elaborating. This goes back to my point. You want to create a primary message, a core message that really encapsulates people and brings them in, and then you follow up with your points and your data points and whatnot. Keep answers professional even when challenged. This is the hard part, and we're going to look at some media interviews in a moment that show you, when people give you questions that are hard to answer, it's really important that you don't lose your cool, right? It's really important that you stay composed and that you use that opportunity to educate them rather than, go into your emotional bag and pull out whatever, anger, rage, whatnot. So make sure that even when challenged, you stay professional. Virtual interviews, these are webinars, podcasts. Make sure that you're ready. Technology can always arise and issues can, but make sure that you are ready and prepared to present. And we were just talking about challenges and it arose. Look at that. Yes, so make sure that you're ready to present and test all audio, video, and internet beforehand. Engagement is crucial. Use expressive gestures and voice modulation to get your message across and make sure that people are engaged and paying attention. Best practices, look at the camera to mimic eye contact, minimize distractions, background noises, notifications, use notes, but avoid reading them verbatim. Here's the bridging technique. So this helps to stay on message, and it's really important when, back to the point about, people are going to try to catch you up, right? People are going to try to go take the interview in a direction that you may not want to go. So you're going to have to redirect them in a way that isn't confrontational, but keeps you on message. So some common bridging phrases. That's an interesting point, but what's more important is, so it's acknowledging what they said, but it's bringing it back to what you want to talk about. Remember, this is your interview. You are in control. So make sure that you take hold of the interview in a way that shows that you are going to talk about what you want to talk about, rather than allowing the interviewer to kind of dominate the conversation. Another one is that while that's one perspective, here's what we're focusing on, right? So acknowledging again what they said, but making sure that you are letting them know, here's what you want to focus on during the interview, and bringing it back to that point. And here's another, it's important to remember. So that's basically saying they may say something that's out of line with your perspective or what you believe or what your evidence supports. Bringing them back to, it's important to remember, says that they're missing a key point of, their perspective of what they're saying. And you are offering that in an educational way to help round out the interview. So that's really important. Just some examples really quick. Isn't your company responsible for the recent industry decline? And here's an answer. While the industry is evolving, we're focused on creating substantial solutions that benefit both businesses and consumers. So that is acknowledging, again, what they said, but you are managing the conversation. You're putting positivity back into it by saying what your company is doing, and you're focusing on bringing the conversation back to a point where you feel in control, and they know that you are the expert on that particular subject. Handling challenging questions. Difficult questions can require composure and strategic responses. So again, hypothetical questions. Avoid speculating, avoid putting yourself in a position to where you say something that's not actually factual or not backed by your organization or your campaign or your company or whatever it may be. So stick to the facts, stick to what you know, stick to what the data supports, and you'll be okay. Once again, if you wouldn't want it published, don't say it. Loaded or leading questions. So this goes back to the point of they may be missing a perspective, right? Or they may be trying to take you down a thought process that isn't in line with what you want to get across. So an example is, why is your product failing in the market? Our product is gaining traction and we've seen positive responses from early adopters, which is basically saying if your data supports that, say it. If your data is not in line with what they're saying, or you have a different perspective, let that be known. Let that come through. Acknowledge what they say, but also make sure that you take the conversation in the direction that gets what you want to get across. Interviewers are going to try to provoke you, not intentionally, I shouldn't say provoke, but they're going to look for points in what you say that allow them to kind of pounce on it or expand on things that may not be favorable to what you want to get across. So you want to make sure you stay calm and professional in those moments. An example is, how would you respond to critics saying your campaign is a failure? We value all feedback and are committed to continuous improvement. Here's what we've accomplished so far. That acknowledges what they've said, the feedback, and maybe that's a belief that they have. However, here's what you know that you've accomplished that make your campaign a success. Here's the people you know you've reached that make your campaign successful in terms of what you've outlined for the campaign. So make sure that you always take the conversation back from them trying to make it what they want it to be. Stick to your message. Don't be baited into, they're going to ask the question in probably different ways, right? Or they're going to try to come at it from a different angle. Don't fall for that trap. Stick to what it is that you know and believe and what you've already communicated. So an example is, as I mentioned, our focus remains on this or that, or whatever it may be, or getting students involved. Our focus remains on being the organization for students to come and lobby and get their policies across. So don't allow people to take your message and make it what they want it to be. Off the record traps. This goes back to being off the record or on the record. Assume everything is in public unless you state otherwise with the journalist and they agree to it. That's the other part. They have to agree to it being off the record. So you want to make sure that you are very careful with what you say to them, because they're going to try to do it in a friendly manner, right? They're not going to approach you as a hard journalist, especially if they want to get a story out there or they're looking for a quote. They're going to do it in a way that leaves you believing that they're just having a conversation, but very well that conversation could lead back to expert from XY organization says this about students or says this about education policy, and you just want to make sure that you don't give them the opportunity. So unless you say off the record, imagine that they're going to publish it or attribute it to you. Before we go to mock interviews, I want us to look at some examples of good media interviews and bad interviews. So this first one is with Anne Hathaway. She's an actress, if you don't know, and she's on, I believe, Good Morning America. And the interviewer is asking questions about an incident that happened. And she handles it so well. It's a very sensitive topic, and it would have made sense had she felt offended or, changed her demeanor to be defensive. But I think what she did was really take control of it and shut the question down in a way that, had the interviewer continued to press, they would have looked really bad. So I'm going to share this with you. I have to wait 1 second. Let me open it. All right.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
Morning, Matt.
Seen a lot of you lately.
Sorry about that.
You were.
I'd be happy to stay home, but the film.
Let's just get it out of the way. You had a little wardrobe malfunction
Mm.
the other night. What's the lesson learned from something like that, other than that you keep smiling, which you always do?
Well, it was obviously an unfortunate incident.
Yeah.
I think it kind of made me sad on two accounts. One was that I was very sad that we live in an age when someone takes a picture of another person in a vulnerable moment and rather than delete it and do the decent thing, sells it. And I'm sorry that we live in a culture that commodifies sexuality of unwilling participants, which brings us back to Les Mis, because that's what my character is. She is someone who is forced to sell sex to benefit her child because she has nothing and there's no social safety net. And so let's get back to
One of
Les
the
Mis.
most creative turns of a question I have ever heard, and I'm going to take it at that.
So first, let's acknowledge that Matt was a complete creep for even asking that question. And then let's acknowledge that Anne Hathaway did a wonderful job of taking that question and flipping it back, right? After hearing her response, it puts her in a light of, you know, this wasn't my fault, and it was weird to even try to put that on her, but the fact that she was able to take that question and handle it so well says a lot about her media training, but it also says something about the technique of taking control of the conversation when interviewers are going to ask questions that, you know, you're like, this is trying to invoke something in me or trying to get a response that's not favorable. So being able to take that and be professional and calm and respond in a way that's, you know, just honest, authentic, and direct, she really nailed that point. So that was an example of a bridging technique as well as a great way to handle a really tough, inappropriate question from an interviewer. Here's an example of not so great interview, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with the Wiggles, but it's a child's TV show. But here are the people who play them. And what we witness is he's not really prepared for this question, right? And that's the lack of preparation. That's a lack of knowing the data points about the topic the interviewer asked. And instead of stopping or trying to end that line of questioning, he allows the interviewer to continue to ask questions about it, and he continues to kind of fumble over his answers. So it's kind of tough to watch, but here we go. Let's give it a look.
Well, I mean, the condition is there, but as I said, it's managed. So I think with, the guys' support and, tailoring things a little bit, I should be able to manage and get back on stage with the Wiggles doing what it is that I enjoy.
Okay, so you're back. I guess the $64,000 question, Anthony. What about Sam?
What about Sam? Sam was, what do you mean?
Well, Sam until yesterday was
yellow, yeah. Well, Sam did a fantastic job. 5 years and 9 years actually, 4 years before that, on the road with us. So what Sam does now is Sam's. His contract is coming to an end. Do we go stay with Sam? Do we come back with Greg? The energy felt right, that's all.
The newspapers today are full of speculation about things. I guess, and tell me if it's not my business, but I guess Sam obviously was an employee rather than a full stakeholder in the Wiggles franchise.
I had nothing to do with it, really, Richard.
Sam was an employee.
Oh, Sam was doing a job. Yeah, he was like, if it's a musical, he was doing the role of,
He was a hired hand.
Yeah.
How did I gather this was news to him?
Yeah. Yes, it was news to him. Yeah.
How did he take it?
I haven't spoken to him. I don't know. I've been on holiday.
Or is that a stupid question?
Well, maybe it's not a stupid question because maybe I have to talk to Sam because to actually find out what he thinks. It's not a stupid question at all. But I don't want to speak for a guy. I don't know how he felt or what
So Greg's back on his feet, able to do the job. Sam's contract comes to an end, and you decide to return to the original lineup. Is it as simple as that?
I think it's more about the energy of the Wiggles and just getting together. And, it's been a good 5 years, but we had 15 years of amazing times. And look, 5 years ago, did we keep going or did we try it again? We got actually a lot of flack for continuing without Greg. Now we're getting flack for continuing with Greg.
Well, you're not getting flack. It's just intriguing. But I mean, you guys are a multi-million-dollar brand.
Yeah.
Sam's obviously got a generation of fans.
That's true
as well.
Yeah.
Was this a hard decision?
Yeah, it was very difficult. I guess, look, for me, I'm really happy that Greg's come back, and I'm really looking forward to. It wasn't so hard for me because the energy for me was more.
Okay, I think we got the point. But to just piggyback on that, there was an opportunity throughout the line of questioning for him to stop the interview and say, Sam contributed greatly to this company, and we're so excited that he did that, and we really are grateful for his contributions. The original Wiggle is now back, and we're excited about that as well. And we're excited about the tour that is about to happen. Like, there was an opportunity for him to take that line of questioning and flip it back and move it along so that if the interviewer tried to persist, the interviewee has already said, I'm ready to move on. And after a while, the interviewer will have no choice but to do that, unless they look, badgering or harping on a certain issue for sensationalism, right? So there was an opportunity for him to bridge. Unfortunately, he didn't. And it probably came from a lack of preparation and him knowing the intricate details of this situation. So once again, before you go into an interview, if you feel you're not comfortable knowing all of the topics and things that you need to know that are likely going to be asked, I would recommend don't do it. I know it's cool to say, oh, I did this interview, I was on TV, I was here, but you'd rather pass up on a great opportunity lest you turn it into a bad one, right? So make sure that you're prepared and ready with all the facts so you don't end up in a situation where the interviewer is asking question after question and you just don't have the answers. Conversely, if that should happen, there is an opportunity for you to bridge into something that you do want to talk about, right? So there may be times where you're on an interview and there's a certain thing that you don't know about X, Y, and Z. Use that opportunity to bridge back into what you want to talk about. And we, like Anne Hathaway did, there's an opportunity for you to bridge and bring it back to the conversation that you actually want to have. Here's another one. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but this is with Janet Mock. And she did a great job, but in the interview, Piers Morgan continued to harp on an aspect that was trying to sensationalize what, her transgender, but she did a great job of making the comments she did that brought it back to what she wanted to talk about and how she felt and what it did for her. So we're just going to watch a really small clip of this.
Thank you. So here you go. It takes a lot of courage. So you're going through school. You've gone from Charles to Janet, from boys' clothes to girls' school clothes, and you've coped with all the teasing and the bullying. You've come through, and it's made you, I guess, strong in your head enough to say, I'm going to go through properly with this and become a woman. I'm going to have a transgender operation, which is a huge thing to do at 18. Tell me how you felt when you actually were approaching the operation.
Well, that was a big step in a long journey, right? It took 18 years to come to that journey. And it may seem very young to a lot of people, but for me, those matters were very urgent and they were also a very long process. And so for me, it was a step for me to move closer to me. It was a reconciliation with myself. It was kind of a stamp of personal approval of my own womanhood.
What was the moment after you had it, when you looked in the mirror and were finally able to think, wow, that is who I'm supposed to be?
It felt validating and affirming.
But was there a moment, was it immediately afterwards, or was it a month, a year?
I think it actually came before it. I think the road coming up to that was actually a bigger journey for me, a bigger sense of validation.
A proper adulthood.
Yes, because at 18, I could finally make the decision to do it on my own without having to consult
It takes such guts, Janet. That's the thing that strikes me about your book and having met you, is you're obviously just incredibly gutsy, but very determined. Because there must have been so many people, I guess, I'm surmising here, trying to persuade you this was not a good idea, that you should stick to nature's plan. You'll have heard all the cliches.
Yeah, I guess I don't marvel at it that much because for me, there was no other choice but to be myself. I was a young trans girl growing up in Honolulu, Hawaii, who had parents that
Hello? Anyone there? Did it freeze? Am I cooked?
I'm not sure. I think
Yeah, it froze.
Okay.
It did.
Yeah, but
we're back.
I
Hello?
was literally just typing a message about that.
Yeah.
Hello? Sorry. I'm so sorry. What was the last thing that anyone heard?
You know, you're so gutsy or something.
Okay. Let me see.
Just incredibly gutsy, but very determined. Because there must have been so many people, I guess, I'm surmising here, trying to persuade you this is not a good idea, that you should stick to nature's plan. You'll have heard all the cliches.
Yeah, I guess I don't marvel at it that much because for me, there was no other choice but to be myself. You know, I was a young trans girl growing up in Honolulu, Hawaii, who had parents that were very ill-equipped, but super loving. They were super accepting of me. And for me, I had no other choice. I needed to be myself. I knew that by choosing to live my life for me and cut out all the noise from other people, then it would enable me to live a life that was full and affirming and happy.
So hopefully you caught that part of it and it didn't cut back out. But I see you guys still on my screen, so I think we're good. But I stopped it there intentionally because the rest of the interview actually doesn't need to happen after that, especially with Pierce Morgan continuing to badger her about a very small, insignificant part of, you know, her journey. And she said multiple times, this is a long journey. This is a long journey. It was leading up to a point. Pierce Morgan missed those cues because he was so trying to sensationalize the physical aspect of it rather than trying to humanize her in a way that talks about her life, right? That humanizes her and says she's more than the transition. What she is, you know, this person living in this lived experience. And I can't talk about that because I'm so trying to get to like, oh, she, you know, even this headline was a boy up until 18. That's really tough as an interviewer to go on there and have to deal with an interviewer like that because it's almost attacking after again. She did a marvelous job throughout this interview, maintaining her composure, making sure that, you know, anger didn't come across. But I can only imagine, you know, how she must have felt when she's trying to tell her whole story and she can't get past this one piece of it. So that was a really great interview from her. Last one, this interview is with Quentin Tarantino, who is a movie director. Again, the interviewer is not great, right? Quentin is getting upset because the interviewer is harping on something that he does not want to talk about. I think Quentin was completely right in his righteous indignation. However, when you are doing an interview, this lives in perpetuity, right? So you want to make sure that they don't have this ammunition to say, oh, see, he didn't do a good job or he doesn't know how to do well under stress or pressure. So you want to make sure that even when the interviewer is saying things or doing things that you can recognize is trying to get you to go a certain way, you have to maintain your composure. And then after the interview, right, go punch a bag, go to the gym, you know, do something like that. But while in that moment, you really have to be mindful and center yourself. So let's check this out really quick. Uh-oh. Here we go.
It's interesting that you have a different view, and I'm just trying to explore that. And I don't want you, because I'm here to sell my movie. This is a commercial for the movie. Make no mistake.
But you
yeah.
So you don't want to talk about anything serious.
I don't want to talk about what you want to talk about. I don't want to talk about the implications of violence. I haven't wanted. Because the reason I don't want to talk about it is I said everything I have to say about it. If anyone cares what I have to say about it, they can Google me and they can look for 20 years what I have to say about it. I haven't changed my opinion.
So you guys get the idea. You know, he took a very defensive stance when it came to the interviewer, and of course, the interviewer was pressing on an issue that he didn't want to talk about. However, how you make that known is really important, and how you recenter the conversation. So then the person interviewing you can't say, "See, now I got to come back at you," or now it's turned tense. You want to make sure that you keep it in a regard or a manner that allows you to move the interview along in a way that's, you know, productive and helpful. So now that we've talked about interviews, I've done all this talking, I'm tired of hearing my voice. I want to know, is there anybody who would be intrigued in doing a mock interview? I promise you it won't be a gotcha question. And we'll just kind of run through questions about USSA, your role, what you do in the organization. And if you're not a part of USSA, that's a great opportunity to bridge it, right? So uh, I see a hand raised. Can you come off and introduce yourself?
Greetings, I am Mia Dennis, a first-year pre-law English scholar hailing from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and attending the Florida A&M University, as well as serving on the operations committee for USSA.
Oh, well, I already know you're about to knock this interview out the park. Uh, Hi, Mia. Thank you for joining us today on CNN. So you all are preparing for a conference today. Can you tell me about what that conference is about and what's going to be happening?
Thank you for asking. The LegCon conference is where students across the nation come together to not only voice their concerns, be it their campuses or their states, but really where we can let our senators and our elected officials know where we stand on current policy issues and much more.
Mia, right now, DC is going through a lot with federal layoffs. There's an ambiguity about what's going to happen with education in this country. Where do you stand, or where does the organization stand on that? And what would you like to see happen?
Well, currently as a student, it's important that we understand that students are all shapes and all forms, male, female, anybody, even just going to age difference. Students could be as young as 17 in the higher education system or even 16 to even as old as really in their 70s. So we encompass a lot of different people. So we have to make sure that the policies that we're advocating for is in support of them. So when it comes to work study, work opportunities in their area to help them fund education, because our largest concern right now is the affordability within the education system.
Nice. I listen, you did a great job. I have, really no notes. I would say feel free to throw in some statistics or data points there about the organization. But other than that, I think you did great. You were clear, you were concise, and you got your point across. So thank you, Mia.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to go? All right, I see a hand raised. Can you come off and introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, Mark Gio Harvey, SUNY SA president. Nice to see you today.
Thank you for being here with us, Gio. So I hear that you all are doing the conference in DC. There's a lot happening in DC right now with the, Department of Education, with people
Sure.
laid off. Why now? What are you all going to do in this moment when so many people are going through what they're going through in this country?
Sure. Well, I think this conference and the purpose of this conference is to make clear that the student voice is here, the student voice is strong, and especially when, speaking to our legislators about the impacts of closing, for instance, the Department of Education, right? That's counterintuitive to the mission of what it's set up to do and the services that it provides to students. And so, we have to make our voices heard on these issues to let these legislators know that we need the Office of Civil Rights to investigate discrimination cases on our campuses. We need the federal Pell Grant, and we need all the services to ensure that we can be successful and pursue a higher education.
Yeah. So when you all get to DC, what are you all going to be doing? Is it going to be, activations, or what exactly are you coming to DC to do?
Well, we're coming to DC to organize and mobilize, again, the student voice and to ensure that these potential policies or these potential pieces of legislation that's negatively going to impact students, we have a strong unified message to say we don't need that to happen. This is what we do need. We need further investments into higher education. We need further expansion of the federal Pell Grant and other student loan opportunities. So we're coming together to organize and mobilize and to solidify that the student voice is here and we're ready to show up.
And how many students do you all represent? Like, what's the number and what's the impact of the work that you all are doing?
Currently, we are 4 million, a little over 4 million students strong within our representation of the United States Student Association, representing students from first generation backgrounds to returning students to adult learners. So we are a vast network of student leaders across the country, again, looking to solidify our voice and our seat at the table when discussing, our future.
Thank you, Gio. Last question. The Republicans are in control of DC right now and across the country. Where do you all fall? Are you in line with, the Democrats? Are you in line with, where exactly do you all fall in that regard of political, calling a political home where the organization lives?
We are in the party of representing the student voice and ensuring that the student voice is represented through both sides of the aisle, because we have to understand, in order to build a coalition, we need to be ensure that our voices reach some of the places that maybe they're not receptive, right? That's a part of our strategy. But in terms of a specific party affiliation, we are affiliated with ensuring that the students of the United States of America have their voices heard and represented at all levels of government.
Thank you, Gio, for your time today.
Thank you, Mark.
I tried to trick you up with that last question.
Yeah.
I think you did a great job. I love the line of we are, I believe you said we are the representation of students, right?
Yeah.
It gets to the point of we're not falling into the trap of talking about, Republican or Democrat. We're talking about students and their needs, and they come in all different forms and political parties. So it's just another way of saying nonpartisan, right? But bridge that back into we are the party of students. We focus on the issues of students. That's a great way to kind of circumvent that question altogether and leave no room for them to kind of dig on either side of the issue. So great job, Gio.
Thank you, Mark.
I think, what time is it? Time check. 7. Okay, so we are about at the end. Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Gio. Are there any questions that anyone has? Please ask.
Mark,
Yeah.
just one quick question. So, just going back to the earlier piece of the presentation, and thank you again for doing this. You talked a little bit about like the questions and how to answer and so on and so forth. But is there ever an opportunity for us to say, if we're doing an interview at CNN, to get those questions in advance, or maybe like topics of those questions, and how might we, go about doing that?
Yeah. So I would say when you're working with somebody who works in media, they kind of manage that part, right? As the person being interviewed, you can ask for that information. It depends on the network. It depends on your relationship with the producer. Usually they agree to a topic. When it gets down to specific questions, they usually don't, because the interviewer may go a whole different direction, or they don't like to do that because then it kind of limits where they can go with the conversation. I will say for like high figures, maybe a Will Smith or Beyonce, they have that luxury of saying, here's what the questions, here's what I'm going to talk about. But for most people, when they go on CNN or some of these traditional media outlets, the method and the rule of thumb is they send you the topics, and very broad, right? But the specific questions, that's kind of open-ended, because the interviewer is going to go where they want to go, and the producer can't really dictate that. They can give them the topic. So that's why it's so important to be prepared on all sides of the issue, on all statistics about what you're going to talk about, because that way, wherever they may choose to go or take the interview, you're prepared. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
One question.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you guys did introductions in the beginning, but I could say my name, so that's what I want to do.
We did not do introductions because the time was
Oh,
we only had an hour, but
okay.
I can see that you are ready for a media interview because you are ready to introduce yourself. So I love that.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, the question was about, sorry, my name is Rachel,
Okay.
right? Um, I'm from Binghamton University. I don't even know. I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm from Binghamton University and I'm studying social work. I'm graduating in May.
Mhm.
So excited to be here, but thank you. My question was, um, like what happens if you want to talk about what's currently going on? Like if you want to direct a question about a person, but you don't want to name that person, aka Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be too direct about who you're talking about, so you don't get caught up. You
Yep.
know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, absolutely. And that is the trap and trick for a lot of organizations and nonprofits and people who operate in a nonpartisan fashion. What you have to do is bring it back to the issue, right? You have to bring it back to not the person. You have to bring it back to the policies. You have to bring it back to some of the actions that are harmful to the community, right? So
Okay. Yeah.
you get, does that make sense? You make the conversation bigger than one person. You make it about a movement. You make it about it
Yeah.
gives you an opportunity to expand upon just that one person. So yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
That helps.
welcome. And I see we have one more hand raised, I believe.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, thank you so much for this training. It's been very beneficial. My name is Michaela Myers. I am the Vice President and Political Action Chair for the NAACP Pennsylvania State Conference. I'm also a appointed official in the city of Philadelphia. I am appointed by Mayor Sherelle Parker, our city's first Black mayor. I am the youth commissioner for the city. I have two questions. So my first question, and sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background. Can you give us an example on how to decline speaking off record in a professional manner?
You mean decline speaking on the record?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So on the record, meaning you don't want what you say attributed back to you and you don't want it printed, right?
Yes. So in the instance that, they're trying to probe and kind of keep asking for any feedback after the interview has already ended, um, what route would we take to kind of like shut that down?
Yeah. So yeah, hey, so say the journalist's name is Rachel. She's asking questions, da da da, still badgering you. Well, not badgering you, but you can tell that the question she's asking is getting back more into the work that you do. Hey, Rachel, I'm happy to continue this conversation. However, I just need to confirm that anything I say from here on out will be off the record. And then, of course, she has to agree to that. And then if should she go back and print something or do something, she's completely violated journalistic ethics, which comes with its own set of consequences. So that's how you would kind of tackle that, just professionally say, hey, I'm happy to continue this conversation if you are, or even I'm not comfortable continuing this conversation unless we can confirm that everything I say is going to be off the record from here on out.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we are
I
past
kind of feel like I should have majored in journalism. I'm sorry.
I majored in public relations, but it is the flip side of journalism. So knowing journalism is really important for my profession. And, journalists don't think we're important, but we make the world go round. So listen, y'all have been great. I appreciate y'all being interactive. I appreciate the little love bro man just gave me. So thank y'all so much. If y'all have any other questions, my email is here on the screen, mark@muse-cc.com. I'm happy to be a resource. I'm happy to help you all when it comes to your media journeys. I know that you are still young and in college, but as you grow, as you get older, you guys seem like really great leaders in the field. So I know there's going to be opportunities for you all to be in front of the camera. If that should happen and you need support, you need assistance, you need guidance, please feel free to reach out. Tiffany, are you still on? I was going to give her some love, but thanks, Tiffany, for putting this together. And thank y'all. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.